askreddit. Drill instructors, drill sergeants of Reddit. What's the funniest thing you've seen a recruit do that you couldn't laugh at? Had one recruit paying attention to a bunch of geese rather than us. Made him get up and chase them all away. As they flew in the air, we made him follow them for several hundred feet to make sure they wouldn't come back. I was dying of laughter on the inside. Didn't know recruits were permitted to participate in joint training exercises with Canadian Special Forces. Standing in formation at Fort Knox about to head to the range and everyone needs their gloves. One private comes out without them and the DS screams, "Private, where the fuck are your gloves?" In this thick Tennessee accent he goes, "Well damn drill sergeant, I must have done left them some bitches upstairs." The DS, from New Jersey, just dies laughing. So when you start basic, your body doesn't know how to handle no sugar, caffeine, rigorous exercise, and sleeping schedules, so it's in shock. With this shock, shitting becomes a problem for a few. Well, every DI after the first week is required to ask around if everyone has taken a shit, and from there he assigns one recruit to track who has shit and who has not. I shit you not, pun intended. We had one guy who would stand in the barracks at the end of the night rolling off names of people who hadn't shit yet. Finally, we have one guy who is still on there after 2 weeks and the DI tells him to go to the doctor. The doctor gives him an get out of jail free card, essentially saying that at any point, he says the magical words "I gotta shit" and he can escape any situation. Well, recruit can't shit, we'll call him, gets the smart idea that he's going to play his new trump card as long as possible. Every time that we're getting grilled, "I gotta take a shit" comes ringing in from the back of the formation. This probably happened 6 times until our DI caught on. Finally our DI devises a plan that when recruit can't shit goes into the bathroom, he's going to have a couple of us hold onto his legs and slide him into the stall all Exorcist style. The time comes and recruit can't shit excuses himself. We all follow our DI into the bathroom and slide him under like he's the spawn of Satan. This catches recruit can't shit by surprise. He doesn't know what the fuck is going on as the DI is utterly berating him about lying and using this as an excuse to sit on the toilet. Then we hear a very audible "oh shit" from the stall. The DI scared the recruit so much he actually took a shit right then and there. The DI made every recruit look at it and we played taps for it as we flushed it down the toilet. While in basic we had a female that loved to smile. She was just a happy person in general. Well, my training instructor came in, and she caught the female trainee smiling. Didn't like smiling. She walked up to the female trainee and yelled, "Wipe that smile off your face." Female trainee stopped smiling. The continued to yell, "No. Literally wipe the smile off your face with your hand." Trainee does so. "Now throw it on the ground." Trainee follows orders. "Now stomp on it and scream 'die, smile, die' as loud as you can." The female trainee stood there for a second before following through. Her tiny little voice cracks as she yelled, "Die, smile, die." And I will say it took everything I had not to bust out laughing. Not me, but I had a great team sergeant who had a floater, wonky eye, that he was blind in from an injury in Iraq. So one eye was dead on and worked fine, but he had this one Uncle Lucas eye that just did its own thing. He was a very physically imposing man with that classic drill sergeant bass-filled voice, and his crazy eye just added to it, and he knew it. He told a story about his time as a drill sergeant when 2 privates had sat down on fire watch and were kinda just being real lackadaisical about their duties when he found them. So he starts just giving them the business, classic Full Metal Jacket style. And finally he just ending his rant right before he's about to smoke them for who knows how long, when one of the offending privates just says, "Drill sergeant, are you yelling at us or the water fountain?" It stopped him dead in his rage and he just walked away mid-knife hand. We weren't allowed to talk during chow at the galley. You had to point at what you wanted another recruit to pass, and they had to silently pass it. One recruit wanted a napkin and pointed. The other recruit asked this. The CC's, Coast Guard DS, immediately came over, circling him like sharks, screaming at him. They made him put like 10 saltines in his mouth and chew until his mouth was full, then ask the first recruit if he wanted a napkin again. He barely could get it out, spitting pieces of cracker everywhere. Then they screamed at the first recruit to answer him, but we were all silently cracking up. Sounded like this: "Phew, want a napkin?" Pieces of saltines flying out. Answer him. Cracking up, almost crying. No. Thank you. It was the best. Oh shit, it's probably too late for this, but I just thought of one. I was a super light sleeper during basic training. One night I woke up for no reason. The sleeping bay was dark except for the light by the desk where the 2 soldiers on fire guard were supposed to be awake and alert. Both of them were leaning back in their chairs dead asleep. I started to throw my covers off to go wake them up. If a drill sergeant came through and caught the fire guards sleeping, we'd all pay. But then I heard a slow scraping sound to my right, off in the darkness. I froze, and heard it again, closer. A few heartbeats later I almost screamed out loud as I saw the sharp intense face of our Samoan drill sergeant in the darkness. His face was covered in full camo. He was low crawling underneath the line of bunk beds towards the fire guard. He had a bayonet in between his teeth. We locked eyes, and he silently raised one finger to his mouth, signaling for silence. I nodded, and sat back to watch the show as the drill sergeant resumed his low crawl under and past my bunk in the direction of the sleeping guards. I have a bunch of stories of funny shit I did to correct soldiers when I later became an NCO. But that image, like something straight out of an 80s war movie, will always stick with me. In Navy boot camp they call forced PTE beatings. Everyone knows what a beating is. Navy doesn't have drill instructors, they call them RDCs, recruit division commanders. One day standing in ranks the RDC is going around asking random trivia questions about a test we had to take to make sure we had been studying. He gets to a guy who was eccentric, to say the least. This is about a month and a half into boot camp. RDC asks the question, guys gets it wrong, so RDC yells, "No wrong, beat yourself." Literally everyone knew this meant start doing push-ups, so the expectation is he will start doing push-ups as the RDC moves to the next guy to ask a question. I was standing across from the guy and he had a confused look on his face. He looked at his own hand for 5 seconds, then hauled off and slapped himself in the face. It made a loud crack sound. He got himself good. I cracked and chuckled, trying to keep composure at attention. The RDC looked to me, then realized why I laughed had to do with the slapping sound. He turned back to self-slapping guy and asked him if he slapped himself. Guy says, "You told me to beat myself." Cue the entire barracks cracking up. It was a single moment during boot camp where the curtain was raised and a moment of unadulterated levity came over everyone. The RDC couldn't stop laughing, so the tough guy asshole persona melted away for a good 60 seconds until he regained composure and made us all do push-ups. The push-ups were an easy price to pay for that moment. We had 2 5 feet 1 inch stocky blonde guys named Johnson in our company one cycle. Different platoons, no relation at all, but they looked really similar. One day during grass week a couple J-hats made them face Agatha and go back and forth screaming, "You're not Johnson, I'm Johnson." "No. Fuck you. You're not Johnson, I'm Johnson." You have absolutely no clue how hard it was to not break into a million pieces after about 5 minutes of that. I work at basic training ranges and we had a drill sergeant yell at his solider while they were getting ready to go down a buddy live fire exercise. The solider froze and started crying. This 18 years/old kid was just in tears for getting yelled at. The DS yelled at him some more and he finally gave up cause this kid wouldn't stop crying. So he made him scoop tears off his face and put them in his pockets till he filled his pockets up with tears. He did this for like an hour. It was hilarious. In my basic training class I was a squad leader, which is essentially just a person who does extra chores. Anyways, for reasons unknown, myself and the other squad leaders were doing push-ups in the drill sergeant's office. Now when you do these push-ups you eventually reach muscle failure, so you just sorta hang out there in the front leaning rest and try to bust out another push-up every few seconds or so. We're all in the dying and the drill sergeant says to one of my buddies, Private Hudson, tell me what's the difference between basic training and being in prison. Without missing a beat, Private Hudson says, Drill Sergeant, in prison they get to watch TV. The drill sergeant cracked a little bit of a smile and then told us to get up and get out of there. During FTX, the DS told me to get a trash bag, then go around and collect as many pine cones as I could. For like 3 hours. Had a bunch of trash bags. He then took a little walk around, contemplated for a bit, then said that he was mistaken and it looks better with pine cones. He ordered me to redistribute all the pine cones. We had this kid who kept pissing himself. One day, after the range, he informs our DI that he had shit himself right after showers. Squad base starts to hold back laughter. DI's not funny. Awkward silence. DI okay, it's a little funny, but we aren't laughing. Man never cracked a smile during the whole thing. Buddy of mine told a story when he was at basic. One guy had said yes mom to the female DS earlier in the day, so when they were all lined up, she was going down the line, asking each person if they called her mom earlier. The guy who did was fourth in line, heard the 3 previous guys say, no, drill sergeant, and then said in all seriousness, no mom. In the academy, one of the DIs had a recruit doing push-ups. He told the kid he was going to do push-ups for 5 minutes straight, or something like that. As soon as the kid started, another DI approached the first DI and started arguing that the kid hadn't really fucked up that bad, and he didn't really deserve to be punished. After some back and forth, he agreed that the kid did indeed deserve to be punished. The first DI then said loudly that he had not checked his watch, so he would have to start the 5 minutes now. At that time another DI approached and started asking for mercy on the recruit, who was by now basically just humping the ground sweatily. It went on like that for a while. Good times. I was never in the service, but here's a funny story from my friend when he was in basic in the Marines in the late 80s. Every day, his whole group would end up digging the entire day. They'd dig a 3x3 hole and fill it back in again. They'd fill buckets with sand and then run through the sand pit, dump the buckets, refill them and run back again. If they weren't doing that, they were just digging in the pit, which was all sand. The DIs would make them stand at attention for hours until parade rest felt like lying down. They ran them ragged. My buddy thought that this was normal. Then it came time to do drilling on parade in front of everyone. Their group was so bad that the DIs changed their personalities into pleasant, calm people and asked everyone, "Why are you guys so bad? How do you not know anything?" The answer was, "We haven't been taught." There were 4 or so DIs that I would trade off training the group, and every one of them threw my buddy's group in the pit all day, every day. They had each independently decided that my buddy's group was the worst, so they should be straightened out with more exercise. After the DIs talked it over, they apologized to the group and then went back into drilling them into proper shape with all the yelling and screaming as normal. Just this time they taught them how to do military stuff instead of how to haul sand. He did get into crazy good shape though. A story from my perspective is a recruit in Navy boot camp. We had an inspection the following day, so our chief was going around inspecting inside everyone's rack to make sure it was squared away. Eventually he made it over to my section. He was checking the rack, bunk bed that opens up, beside me, and had it propped open so I couldn't see his face and kind of forgot he was there. He's searching through this guy's stuff and sees his small gloves. And he asks, "You know what they say about small gloves?" Now keep in my mind, I don't think any of my RDCs heard me talk until this point. And I said without any hesitation, I know that's not true. I wear a size 12 boot, but I can tell you right now I don't have a size 12 cock. And my chief slammed the rack shut and looked at me. What the fuck? He then stormed off into the fish bowl, and all you could hear was him trying to hold back his laughter in the office with the two petty officers.